The car in your driveway right now might be quietly costing you $500,000, not in the payments, but in the wealth it's stopping you from ever building. Most people treat buying a car like a simple decision. The wealthiest people in the country treat it completely differently. Stick around because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why. Most people size up a car by one number, the monthly payment. Can I afford $350 a month? If the answer is yes, the deal feels safe. But that question hides the real issue completely. A car loses value every single day you own it, and the moment it's paid off, plenty of people trade it in and start the exact same loan all over again. That's not one purchase. That's a pattern, repeated every 3 to 5 years for an entire working life, sometimes without a single year free of a car payment. A ride-share driver trading in a paid-off sedan for a newer model isn't making a bad decision once. They're making it on a loop, without ever noticing the loop exists. And loops like that decide, years in advance, how much wealth a person will ever have the chance to build. The sticker price is only the entrance fee. Once the papers are signed, a second set of costs kicks in. Insurance premiums that jump for a newer, more expensive vehicle, registration fees tied to the car's value, and maintenance schedules built around parts that cost more to replace. Then there's fuel, tires, and a small annual property tax bill that many states also tack onto vehicle ownership. None of these show up on the sticker in the dealership window, and almost nobody adds them up before signing. A recently graduated nurse budgeting for her first car loan might account for the monthly payment down to the dollar, then get blindsided 3 months later by a $600 insurance renewal she never planned for. Add up enough of these overlooked expenses, and the real cost of a car turns out to be higher than the number anyone agreed to pay. Every dollar that leaves your hands for a car payment stops doing something else at the exact same moment. Picture 2 seeds planted in the same soil on the same day. Only one of them is ever allowed to grow, because the other gets pulled out of the ground every few years and replanted somewhere else. That's not a metaphor for luck. That's what happens to money the instant it gets redirected toward a loan instead of an investment account. Economists call this opportunity cost, and it rarely makes headlines because there's no visible loss to point to. Nothing gets stolen, nothing breaks down. The money simply never becomes anything more than it already was. A construction worker setting aside $50 a week barely notices the number on paper. What never shows up is the version of that $50 that spent 30 years growing, completely untouched. Picture 2 people starting their careers at the same company, earning the same salary, sitting 2 desks apart. Same rent, same student loan balance, same starting point in every way that matters on paper. The only real difference between them shows up in the parking lot. One of them leases a new car every 3 years, always driving something that turns heads pulling into the office lot, always making the payment on time. The other bought a reliable 5-year-old sedan in cash years ago and has driven it for almost a decade, never once feeling the need to replace it. Nothing about their spending looks reckless on the surface. Neither one would call themselves bad with money, and both would describe their finances as being under control. But underneath 2 ordinary parking spots, their financial futures have already started splitting apart in a way that won't show up for years. Add it up and the picture gets uncomfortable fast. A new car every 3 years usually means a loan payment between $700 and $800 a month, in line with what most new car buyers pay today, plus insurance for a newer vehicle, plus the depreciation hit the moment the car leaves the lot. Over a single year, that adds up to roughly $9,000 to $11,000 moving out of one person's life and into a vehicle worth less every day they own it. None of it goes toward anything that ever pays them back. A dental hygienist earning a solid, steady paycheck might never think of it in yearly terms, just several $100s leaving the account each month, quiet and automatic. But multiply that by 10 years, and the number stops looking small. It starts looking like the down payment on an entirely different life. The other side of that same story looks almost boring by comparison. No loan payment because the car was paid off years ago. Insurance costs less because insurers charge less to cover an older, already depreciated vehicle. There's no monthly stress about a lease return or a mileage limit. Maintenance costs a little more some years, an alternator here, a set of tires there, but even factoring that in, the total yearly cost rarely comes close to what a new car demands in payments alone. A warehouse supervisor driving the same paid-off pickup truck for 9 years spends maybe $2,000 a year keeping it running, total. That leaves a gap of roughly $7,000 to $9,000 a year between the two approaches. On its own, that gap doesn't look dramatic. It's just a number sitting in a bank account, doing nothing in particular yet. That yearly gap doesn't have to just sit there. Move it into an index fund or a retirement account instead, and something changes. The money stops waiting around and starts working, earning returns on itself year after year, compounding a little more each time it grows. Compound interest is often explained with dry math, but the concept is simple. Money makes money. And then that new money starts making money too. An elementary school teacher investing $8,000 a year isn't just saving $8,000 a year. Each dollar invested early has decades to multiply before it's ever needed. The first few years barely look impressive on a chart. The line stays close to flat, almost unremarkable. Then, somewhere around year 15 or 20, the curve stops behaving politely and starts climbing in a way flat savings accounts never could. Run that same $7,000 to $9,000 gap through several decades of average market returns, and the outcome stops sounding like a car decision entirely. It starts sounding like a retirement plan nobody meant to build on purpose, hiding inside a decision that felt completely unrelated to money. Depending on the exact numbers and the years involved, that yearly difference can realistically grow into $300,000, $500,000, or in some cases, well past $1 million by the time someone reaches their 60s. The car itself is long gone by then, sold, traded, forgotten entirely. What's left isn't a car at all. It's a single choice, made decades earlier in an ordinary parking lot that quietly turned into financial independence while nobody was watching the odometer or expecting anything to add up to this much. None of this is an argument for driving something falling apart. A car that breaks down every other week, or one that isn't safe to be in during a crash, isn't frugal. It's a different kind of expensive, just spread out across tow trucks and missed shifts instead of a loan. The distinction that matters isn't old versus new. It's reliable versus unreliable, and those two categories don't line up perfectly with price tag or model year. A well-maintained car with 100,000 miles on it can be safer and steadier than a brand new model nobody bothered to service on schedule. A retail manager driving a decade-old hatchback with regular oil changes and fresh brakes isn't taking a risk. She's making a calculated trade. Give up the new car smell, keep the safety and the reliability, and let everything saved in between go somewhere that actually grows. So what does a smart car decision actually look like, stripped of ego and impulse? It starts with reliability ratings, not curb appeal. Which models consistently rack up high mileage without major repairs, and which ones show up again and again on mechanics' warning lists? Safety ratings matter just as much, especially for anyone driving with a family or commuting long distances daily. A slightly older model with strong crash test scores will usually beat a newer one that cut corners in that department to hit a lower price point. Total cost of ownership pulls it all together. Purchase price, insurance, fuel efficiency, and expected repairs. Added up over the years, someone actually plans to keep the car. A firefighter comparing two used trucks side by side ends up making a decision that has almost nothing to do with which truck looks better in the driveway. If the math is this clear, why do so many people upgrade anyway? Because a car decision was never purely a math problem to begin with. It's one of the most visible purchases a person makes, parked in full view of neighbors, co-workers, and anyone glancing over in traffic. Status plays a bigger role than most people admit out loud. A newer car signals something, whether or not that signal is true, that things are going well, that money isn't tight, that a certain level has been reached. Nobody sees the retirement account. Everybody sees the bumper. A software developer who just got a raise might feel an almost automatic pull toward a nicer lease within weeks, even though nothing about the raise required it. That pull rarely comes from logic. It comes from comparison, and comparison has never once made anyone richer. A raise almost never stays a raise for long. The moment more money starts coming in, expenses have a strange habit of expanding to meet it, one comfortable upgrade at a time, until the extra income disappears into a slightly nicer version of the exact same life. The car is usually one of the first things to shift. A modest sedan becomes a slightly bigger SUV. The SUV becomes something with heated seats and a bigger loan attached to it. Each step feels small and completely justified in the moment it happens. 10 years later, the paycheck has grown considerably, but the bank balance hasn't moved the way anyone expected. Not because of one bad decision, but because of a dozen small ones that all pointed the same direction, quietly canceling out every single raise before it had a chance to matter. At the end of the day, this was never really about cars. It's about two paths that often look identical from the outside, but lead to completely different places over time, one small decision at a time. Some people spend their money to look successful right now, buying the version of wealth that shows up in a parking lot for everyone else to see. Others quietly choose an ordinary car for a while, redirecting that same money into something nobody else will ever notice until one day it becomes impossible to ignore. Looking rich and being rich were never the same thing, and they rarely happen to the same person at the same time. One is loud, immediate, and visible. The other is patient, unremarkable, and eventually undeniable. The choice about which path to take usually starts with something as ordinary as what's parked in the driveway tonight. If videos like this one help you see money differently, follow the channel. More breakdowns like this one are coming, built around the everyday decisions that quietly shape someone's entire financial future. Now here's a question worth sitting with. If nobody else could ever see what you drove, would you still be driving the same car you have right now? Drop your honest answer in the comments below.